Hello everyone. Today's video will be a continuation video from our previous JDBC tutorial. In this video, we will be seeing about prepared statement as well as CRUD operations with them. As you are well aware of, this is our previous program from part 1. Let me just grab our credentials for connecting with our SQL server and let me create a new project. Starting with one major change is that I won't be defining those login credentials inside my main method. Instead, I'm going to define them outside our main method as a private static final. So same goes for my user and my password. Now let's define our main method. Before that, let me load up my dependencies for my main method. In programming, CRUD stands for read, update, and delete. So these are essentially the four operations that are involved, that are classified as CRUD. Let's start with our create operation. I'm going to define a method that essentially creates employees in our existing database. In our previous session, this is the database we essentially used. So here we have values like employee name, age, experience, skill, and employee type. In create method as well, we need to supply the following values to populate an employee in our existing database table. I need a employee name, his age, years of experience, skill, and the role. So right now I have called this method that will create a new employee in my database table, but I'm yet to write this method. So to do that, let me create the method as a private static void. So here, this will be my employee name, age, experience, skills, and type. So inside this create employee, let me create a try block. I'm going to create a new connection object. As we have discussed in the previous video, connection object essentially establishes a connection between our Java program and a SQL server. So we need to call the driver manager and get connection. So inside the get connection, we need to supply our URL, our user, as well as our password. So once this is done, as you can see, I'm getting a warning here. It shows that unhandled exception. So get connection method throws an SQL exception. We need to handle it. So I'm going to create a catch block. So inside the catch block, I'm doing print stack trace. So exception handling is not part of this session, and we will be covering them in a separate video in the future. Let us write the actual SQL query that helps us to create new employee within our SQL table. So here we are inserting 5 different values. So for that we are having 5 different placeholders. In our previous tutorial, we have used a statement object that we got from the connection object. But in this tutorial, we are going to use something called prepared statement that also we will be deriving it from connection object. So to do that, I'm going to create a prepared statement object. So this is how we create a prepared statement object. So from connection object, we are simply passing the query that we have initially created. So what this does is that this will precompile our SQL query in the SQL Server. Once we have precompiled our SQL query, we need to supply value to all our placeholders. To do that, we need to call our prepared statement object that we are newly created, and if the object is an integer, we have to select set int, and if the current placeholder value is a string, we need to call set string. So the first value, employee name, is a string, so we are calling set string. And now I have to define the place. So this is then the first place, so I'm gonna give the integer 1 followed by the value. Similarly, for age, experience, skill and employee type, let us define now. As we all know, age is an integer as well as experience is an integer. So let me define them. So here I will use set int followed by the place and the value. Similarly, for experience, it is set int followed by the place and the value. Then the remaining ones are skill and type. Both comes under string. So once I have defined my placeholders, now I need to update my SQL query. So here I have precompiled my SQL query, but they are yet to update these latest placeholder values. So to do that, I need to call on my method called execute update. So what this method does is that it will update this precompiled SQL query with the actual values. So our create method is done. We can test it out. So I'm running my Java program. So the program is finished. Let me see. Initially we had 10 employees. Here our 11th employee got added. So all our values are replicating in our SQL table. Now let us focus on read operation. I'm going to create a method called read employees. For read operation, I'm not going to supply any parameter over here. I'm going to create a try block with the connection object. For the try block, we need to create a catch as well. Same SQL exception. For reading the database from the table, we can do by two ways. Either we can do a prepared statement or we can do a regular statement that we have covered in the previous lecture. So in this video, I will cover read operation using a prepared statement. So similar to create, we need a query. Let me create the prepared statement. So once this is done, we need an object to store the results from our query. As this is a read operation, we need something called result set, which we have covered in previous lecture. And instead of update query, here I'm going to call a method called execute query. This essentially returns a result object by executing our previous precompiled query. Now, we will use a while loop to read what is in the result set. So this operation, that is result set.getEnt as well as result set.getString, was discussed in previous video, link in description. So let me run this program again. So as you can see, we are able to fetch data from our table into our Java program. So now let me complete update as well as delete. We can update any data in our table except the primary key. Just for the simplicity purpose, I'm going to try updating the skills value using the employee ID. So let me create the update employees method. As usual, I'm defining my try and catch blocks. Let's define the query to update data. Now let us create our prepared statement object. Now let us send actual data to these placeholders. Skills is a string and employee ID is an integer. So once we define our data, let us update our prepared statement. Let us try running our program now. As you can see, previously the employee was skilled in HTML and CSS. Now we have updated our skill set to JavaScript. Finally, let's move on to our delete operation. Let me define the query to delete actual employee from the database table. Let's precompile the query and supply the integer for that placeholder. Finally, let us update the query. Let us try running this Java program now. As you can see, the user data is now gone. This prepared statement is a feature that allows many benefits such as pre-compilation of SQL queries by the database server and improved performance, and most importantly, protection against SQL injection. For those of you that doesn't know about SQL injection is a technique that hackers use to get unauthorized data from the backend by manipulating this SQL queries. By using prepared statements, we are essentially sending the data as a parameter. Like in this case, instead of sending an actual SQL query, this can be avoided. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and follow us for more interesting tutorials.